Respected Dr. Mohan Kanda sir and our Director General Dr. Chandrasekhara ji and all my faculty colleagues and all the consultants, SRFs and fellows of Manage. A very warm welcome to this Manage Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Series. At the outset, I would like to thank very much Dr. Mohan Kanda sir for accepting our invitation and to take this session on rejuvenating agricultural extension, my experiences. And sir, I would like to just give a very brief 1 or 2 points about this Manage Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Series. Our Director General is very much keen, sir, that all the lifetime experiences of very eminent people need to be captured, and not only just by giving a session, but it has to be recorded and then should work as a repository of such inspirational speeches, so that all the stakeholders of agriculture should be able to get the essence of their life, the eminent people's life, and then use it for as an inspiration for their growth and development, and then upbringing all the younger generation into the agriculture field, sir. And we would like to invite very eminent persons from varied fields of agriculture and development, motivate and inspire the professionals of agriculture. And only outstanding personalities we are inviting, sir, for these programs. And sir, these Manage Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Series sessions will be video recorded, and then we would like to share them through Manage YouTube channel, and also the link will be provided to many of the around a lakh stakeholders of Manage who are working in various fields of agriculture and other allied sectors, sir. And also samitis and scientists of KVKs, universities, agripreneurs, and around 1 lakh such stakeholders are there, sir, whose addresses and email IDs are available with us. So it will be shared to with all of them, sir. And during this academic year of 2021-22, we would like to conduct a series of programs, a minimum of 12 sessions we would like to conduct, sir. And in this with this background, I would like to request our Director General, Dr. Chandrasekhara ji, to kindly introduce this towering personality. And we are very fortunate to have Dr. Mohan Kanda sir on this program. So I would like to request our Director General to kindly introduce Dr. Mohan Kanda sir. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Jayaji. Good morning to all of you. I would like to, first of all, thank profusely Dr. Mohan Kanda ji for accepting our invitation. Thank you very much, sir, for sparing your valuable time. Sir, in fact, we are introducing Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Series lecture this year. Of course, Dr. Jaya, she gave a brief background. We have lakhs of public and private extension functionaries, not only working in agriculture sector, but several sectors at different levels, national level, state level, district level, and block level and below. Reaching all the extension professionals is a Herculean task for institution like Manage, which is located in Hyderabad. So we have designed a Krishi Gyandeep Knowledge Series lecture in which outstanding professionals, they share their lifetime experience, for which Manage faculty members will be direct audience. They listen, they ask a question, clarify the issues, and take the lessons. More than that, the talks are converted into films which can be disseminated through social media, and more than 1 lakh individuals and organizations, not only within the country, even outside the country, who are in our Manage database mailing list that we are sharing with all the people. The very purpose is the rich experience of outstanding professionals should reach every extension worker who is working for welfare of the farmers. So this is the very objective. It's my great privilege on behalf of Manage family to introduce today's esteemed speaker, Dr. Mohan Kanda ji, to this group. Dr. Mohan Kanda ji is 1968 batch Indian Administrative Service Officer of Andhra Pradesh cadre. He is also doctorate in cooperative agricultural credit. He occupied very important positions at national level and state level. He retired as Chief Secretary to the government of Andhra Pradesh. But sir, manage was under your guidance when you were Secretary Agriculture to Government of India. And Dr. Mohan Kandaji served as member National Disaster Management Authority with the rank and status of a Union Minister of State to Government of India. His professional contribution is full of innovations and reforms, for which the country is grateful to Dr. Mohan Kandaji. In fact, sir, we all remember that Andhra Pradesh was the first state to formulate Vision 2020 in the entire country. It was a role model plan. It also included the roadmap for achieving the Millennium Development Goals. As a cooperative registrar of cooperative society in Andhra Pradesh, sir also introduced a single window credit delivery system benefiting all the stakeholders. It was ease of doing cooperative credit business for the department and great benefit to all the users. Dr. Mohan Kandaji was instrumental in bringing reforms and introduction of macro management. Today we are seeing Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana. Sir, Manage is also knowledge partner to Ministry of Agriculture for implementation of RKVY project. And the seeds of this RKVY projects were sown by Dr. Mohan Kandaji by introducing macro management when he was Secretary Agriculture, Government of India. Sir was also instrumental in working for and introducing several policy initiatives: National Policy on Agriculture, National Policy for Cooperatives, National Policy for Relief and Rehabilitation of Project Affected Persons. Not only national, in fact, sir worked with very closely with several international organizations like SIDA, SDC, DFID, IFAD, JICA, Asian Development Bank, World Bank. And the very interesting part of Dr. Mohan Kandaji is, in spite of all his busy schedule, he contributed several books, not only in agriculture, but also on literature, not only in English, but also in Telugu. He is also, very popular among literary circles. Very recently, sir, a book on agriculture in India, Contemporary Challenges in the Context of Doubling Farmers' Income. This publication was released by Honorable Vice President Sri Venkaya Naidu ji at Hyderabad. Sir, in fact, Manage took the initiative of extending this book to all the principal secretaries of agriculture of all the states and through our library also for the benefit of end users. So this is the very brief professional background of Dr. Mohan Kandaji. Sir, on behalf of Manage family, I would like to thank you and welcome you to this Manage Krishi Gyandyut Knowledge Series lecture 2. I request all the colleagues to listen for next 45 minutes, followed by 15 minutes, interaction, question and answer. So thank you, sir, and welcome to this talk.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid there is a customary degree of exaggeration in the introduction, which is, I suppose, out of politeness to the guest of the day. But I'm humbled by the views expressed about me and my humble record in agriculture. I'd like to begin on a lighter note. There was a VIP once who was invited to a village. And then, of all things, he arrived too early. Now, going late is all right, but arriving early, like, a barat in a marriage, if you go early, people will be surprised and they'll be taken aback. So this is what happened with this man. So there's a lot of confusion, there's a little chaos. And then finally, they got their act together and then the program began. For 2 days, it went off smoothly, function after function. And afterwards, he was leaving. And at the railway station, there was a farewell party arranged by the mayor of the village. They're somewhere abroad. And then I believe the mayor said, sir, on account of circumstances beyond our control, we could not receive you properly. However, we have great pleasure in seeing you off, which is not what he meant. What he meant was that at least this farewell function is happening properly, but it conveyed the feeling that the village was relieved that this man was going away. So I don't want to sort of hold you too long, but with this lecture, let me be as brief as I can. But then it is bound to be somewhat detailed. To begin with, I'd like to share with you the fact that I'm a very proud Indian. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm a citizen of this great country. There are several things, several reasons, but one of the first reasons that comes to mind, all of you, I'm sure, will agree with me, is the fact that India is probably the only country in the history of the world which shed the shackles of colonial oppression through a completely peaceful means, without a drop of bloodshed being, incurred. And that, I think, is a great achievement. As soon as recently as even Sudan, right from the American War of Independence, we have never seen such a peaceful struggle. And secondly, I think easily the greatest achievement after that was our accepting democracy as a form of governance, putting in place a very elaborate and highly compact and well thought out constitution with incorporating the best possible principles from all over the world. And easily another achievement which I think we can always be proud about is the fact that thanks to the Green Revolution, first Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, my Guruji, and then so many others like Dr. Kurian for White Revolution, the Blue Revolution in fish, the Yellow Revolution, Dr. M.V. Rao from our own state in oil seeds, etc. Total food security, at least in terms of availability. Accessibility is an issue, I agree. Purchasing power is an issue, transport, storage are an issue. Then many other issues in accessibility, nutrition is another issue. But then by and large, we have not only achieved from the days of, many of you are very young, but Dr. Chandrasekhara will probably remember that in the 1960s, we were called a ship-to-mouth country. Until the PL-480 ship came and the wheat grain was offloaded, the country went hungry. From that ship-to-mouth existence, we have come to a stage where we are able to offer food grain as gift and as on sale to other countries, although not on a sustained basis. So that it's a great thing. And then our institutions, the Supreme Court, the Chief Information Commission, the Union Public Service Commission, and our election commission, conducting elections for a country of 1.2 billion, repeatedly, fairly, impartially, and allowing the voice of the common man to be heard in the process of election is a great achievement. All these things make me feel very, very happy. Our IITs, our IIMs manage itself. I was there when Suresh Kumar, the first DG, was there at just vacant land. And then I was Joint Secretary Extension when it was coming up. Dr. Arora was the DG. Then I was Secretary again and became the chairman of its executive committee for a little while. So institutions like manage all these things, and then what have we not done? We've gone to, Antarctica. We've actually led expeditions to the moon and to Venus. And then we've got Sunil Gavaskar, we've got Sindhu, we've got champions in chess, we've got mounted successful expeditions to Mount Everest. What have we not done? Or Nobel Prize winners and Bharat Ratnas like M.S. Subbulakshmi and others, music, art, culture, you name it, we've done a great job. But then that's not the end of the story. In Hyderabad city, today, as we are all talking to each other, children are being sold as if they are commodities. And women are still being killed, literally killed in the 21st century in the name of honor in some parts of our country. And farmers are committing suicides. So this, I don't think the other part of the coin doesn't really present a very encouraging picture. But then I'm not depressed at all. We have done a lot. There's a lot to be done. And I am not at all concerned or anxious about the future. I'm confident we have done everything. What has our farmer not done? You showed him the green revolution technology, he adopted it. Chemical fertilizers, yes. Major irrigation, yes. And then high yielding varieties of wheat and rice, yes. And then he has shown the world that he's a very quick learner and a very hardworking and smart farmer. So this just by way of introduction. And the transition, as you all know, from capture to culture represented one of the greatest milestones in the history of mankind, when man learned that he need not do the slash and burn kind of agriculture, that he can, adopt sustainable agricultural practices and culture food crops and animals, etc., rather than merely capture them by hunting and picking. And only thing is, while many things have happened, many issues still need to be addressed, which I'll come to later. But among the main ones I would like to say is creating a space for women in agriculture, for the youth, greater expanded and creative use of the advantages given by information technology. I think these are some of the important things that come to my mind. And of course, a rich legacy. Our country has a history of thousands of years, and a rich legacy has been bequeathed to us by way of indigenous technical knowledge. So many wonderful things. Like, for instance, we talk about integrated pest management and about, when to spray the pesticide at what time and in what quantity, etc. I heard a story told to me by one Dr. K.K. Das, who was Deputy Director General Extension in ICR when I was Joint Secretary. I believe one farmer was listening to a plant one morning. So I believe Dr. Das went up and went in Assam. I believe he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm waiting for a whistle." He said, "Do plants whistle?" He said, "Yes, the plant whistles, and on that day is the right day for spraying pesticide." Now, who can match that sort of scientific knowledge? No, but my point is, we should not accept such things blindly. ITK is a treasure which has to be, it's a storehouse of knowledge which has to be first inventorized, then validated, and then disseminated. This is not something that has not been done very satisfactorily, which is why I'm raising the issue upfront in my talk. And I think my talk will not merely be about extension, where managers largely, of course, I was Joint Secretary Extension in the beginning, but then I moved out to other subjects. I will be covering a few other subjects also. But then I must confess right in the beginning that although I have a doctorate in a very narrow field called agricultural cooperatives and credit, I am no real expert on agriculture as such. I have no degree in agriculture, nor have I practiced. In fact, for 3 generations, my family has never had any piece of land also. So, but however, I have moved closely with the field for a long time. And when I was in Usmania University as a student, one professor had come from Harvard to deliver a lecture. And the lecture was to be on fundamental particles of physics. Some of you must be familiar with that. Higgs boson and gravitational particles and God's particle in Switzerland research and all that. So when he was about to start the lecture, someone went and whispered in his ear, "Sir, please be a little generous, because the audience is full of laymen." So this man was taken aback. A Harvard professor can't change his lecture at the last minute. That is finalized months ago and shared with so many people. But then he did what he could. He made a hash of it. Neither was he happy nor the audience. And finally, a friend of mine, while proposing a vote of thanks, said, "Sir, thank you very much. Instead of giving us a lecture on fundamental particles of physics, you have given us a fundamental lecture on the particles of physics." So I don't want to sort of distort the remit of my opportunity today. Let me see how much I can get across to you. Both in my academic career as well as in my service as a civil servant, I have often got what I did not want. Now, for instance, somebody told me, one Jyotish told me that I would get posted next to a river as sub-collector. So I was having dreams of being posted in Vijayawada, Krishna River, or Rajahmundry, Godavari, etc. Finally, I was posted in Ongole. And when I went around and looked very, very hard, I found a small river called Gundlakamma there. So he was right. But that was not what I wanted, especially because it had become a new district. The collector's bungalow and office had been taken away by the new collector, the sub-collector's bungalow. And I had to live in a rented house. And then in a rented building was my office, etc. Now, similarly, but then always I enjoyed whatever came my way. Then before I start, I'd like to just tell you also that after independence, the greatest second watershed in the history of modern India was the advent of the forces of liberalization, privatization, and globalization. You know that. I'm mentioning that because it impinges on agriculture. And all sectors, telecommunications, civil aviation, higher education, you name it, have got adjusted, structurally adjusted within quotes, but not agriculture. Somehow, no effort was made to support the process of adjustment of agriculture to this change, waves, winds of change which are blowing across the economy. But recently, it's heartening to find that the 3 farm laws that have been brought in have opened up avenues of hope in the right direction. Of course, a lot of homework will have to be done. Aggregation will have to be done. Sensitization will have to be done to the extension staff as well as the farmers about things like good agricultural practices abroad and what is acceptable and what is not and things like that. And a lot of infrastructure will have to be created. And patiently, we have to wait for the promise extended by the legislations to convert itself into action. So this will have to be done. Now, come back to what I was telling you about myself. I always wanted to be a scientist, especially in the field of chemistry. I had a lab at home when I was 14 years old and all that. But when I went to Delhi, they said, no, sorry, if you want one college where I really wanted to join, St. Stephen's College, they said, if you can join if you take mathematics. I said, no, I'll try my hand at some other college. So I went to Hindu College after a couple of days, and they also said only maths. And by that time, I had lost the maths opportunity in St. Stephen's. So I had to join mathematics. And then chemistry was only a subsidiary subject. When I came back to Usmania University and I asked for admission in chemistry, they said, no, we'll give you only admission in a postgraduate course in a subject which was your main subject in honors. So I had to take mathematics again. But then, till today, I am deeply dedicated to the subject of mathematics. I'm in love with the subject. And even today, I spend a lot of time working on the thing. And I did the theory of relativity, which introduced me to exciting things like, astrophysics and Einstein and quantum mechanics, etc. And I never regretted it. So similarly, agriculture. I, for instance, never liked the subject of cooperation. I thought it was, full of corruption and bureaucratic political interference and bureaucratic, ineptitude, and that it was not a sector worth going to. I not only became the registrar of cooperative societies, but stayed there for 4 years, the longest tenure in my life. But then that began my courtship with agriculture. From there, I went as Secretary of Agriculture of Uttar Pradesh. From there again, I went as the Civil Supplies Commissioner. Then to Excise Department, where also there were cooperatives of toddy typers, and came back as Secretary of Agriculture and went to Delhi for a stint of 5 years. So from then onwards, 1984 onwards, till today, that is about 36 years plus, I've had a continuous relationship with agriculture. Even after my retirement, actually, I'll come to this in a minute. Now, a brief sort of digression here. All civil servants have an opportunity to serve in the government of India. And I think it's absolutely essential because the government of India has a kind of impersonal, dispassionate, officer-oriented culture where, decisions are taken at a much higher level than in the states where administration is office-oriented. And especially the job of a joint secretary is very interesting because I always called it the bottom of the top and the top of the bottom. A joint secretary can attend a meeting in the Prime Minister's office. Nobody will object. And he can go to a dealing hand, a clerk, take away the papers from him and start dealing with the subject. Nobody will object. No one else has that sort of advantage. So it was a great advantage. But what happened actually was that I was working as Secretary Agriculture in Hyderabad. Then Mr. J.C. Pant, who one of the most illustrious agriculture secretaries ever, was additional secretary in Agriculture Ministry at the time. He happened to come to Hyderabad. Those days I lived in Mayuri Apartments and had a house which was on the way to the erstwhile Begumpet Airport. So practically everyone who came to NIRD or other institutions for a course invariably landed up in my house, having dinner on the way to catching the evening flight to Delhi. So came Mr. Pant. And a few days later, Government of India notified vacancies for going to working in the Government of India, and I gave my name. Then Mr. Balram Jakar, the Union Agriculture Minister, came to Hyderabad to visit the cyclone affected areas. And I met him at the airport. And then he was accompanied by an additional secretary called Taimini, who was also a course mate of mine, who introduced me to him and then mentioned the fact that I was, my name was under circulation. I never wanted to go to Agriculture Ministry really. I was hoping I'd get to Commerce or Economic Affairs or something. But then Mr. Pant, I think, also put in a word, and somehow my name landed in Agriculture. Then I rang up PVRK Prasad, who was working with the Prime Minister, Mr. PV Narasimha Rao, who was information advisor, saying, look, do you think you can do something about this? Because I'm not very particular about Agriculture Ministry in particular. Then he checked with the Prime Minister, and Mr. PV Narasimha Rao, I believe, said, let Mohan come to Delhi, then we will see. Now, I don't know if you have heard of olden days, before the Congress split into Congress and Congress I, there used to be a group called Syndicate. And Mr. Kamaraj Nadar was a member of that syndicate. And Indira Gandhi broke that syndicate and all that and split the party. One member of that, Kamaraj Nadar, in fact, Kamaraj Nadar was also Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. His house was called Parkalam. I don't know if there are any Tamilians in the audience today. If there are Parkalam means, let us see. That was the trademark approach of Kamaraj to all issues. Let us see. And PV Narasimha Rao Garu was no different. So he also said, let us see, let us wait. So nothing happened. I landed in Delhi. I became Joint Secretary Extension. I spent fulfilling 5 happy, comfortable, rewarding years and never looked back. But then point was, that's not where I intended to go. So as they say, man proposes and God disposes. But then as soon as I started my stint in agriculture, I discovered what a fascinating subject it was. You are all agricultural scientists, you know that. I mean, there is physics and chemistry in the soil. There is botany in the plants. There is zoology in the pests and diseases. And then there's engineering in warehousing. Then there's economics in marketing. And so what is it that an agriculture scientist does not have to know? And what is it? Of all people, we think he is ignorant, illiterate and all that. The farmer knows all these subjects. Otherwise, he would not be able to carry on his avocation at all. So, but I learned, because I dealt with all the agriculture institutions in the entire country and some abroad, I learned that one must know enough about technical issues to be able to converse competently with scientific people, academicians and researchers and experts, etc. But on the other hand, one must retain a certain amount of detachment from details so that one can continue to be. No, that was what the secret of leadership was. In fact, I'm sure you have heard of this, that it is said that an expert is a person who knows more and more about less and less until he knows all about nothing. So I have more or less come to that state of nirvana in agriculture, where I can talk about any subject, but up to a point. There is a joke about this, about a man who went for an interview. I believe in his biodata, he had said that he was conversant in French and German. So I believe the board asked him, do you think you can converse with me freely in German? I believe he said, yes, sir, provided you have learned the same 8 lessons which I have learned. So my knowledge is confined largely to my experience and exposure. I have no basic this thing. Now, Agriculture Ministry, after I joined, I tell you, it was really not a dull moment in 5 years. Something or the other, either potatoes were not being sold in Karnataka, or there is some locust attack in Haryana, or some, nowadays that residue burning in Punjab, or there's a cyclone in Gujarat, or there's a flood in Bihar. Something or the other kept everyone on his feet and, rushing around. But I was able somehow to keep my balance. And once somebody asked me, how do you manage to keep smiling all the time in this ministry? So I told him that I keep smiling because it is not good to laugh. People will think, no, it's polite. Because I used to find it really odd and funny and amusing that the Secretary of Agriculture and his staff and ICAR and Animal Husbandry and Fishery experts sitting in Krishi Bhavan should believe that they were running the agriculture system of the country. The poor farmer is doing everything. And here you hold an annual press conference and say that we have done this, we have done that. Etc. Of course, not taking away from the role of the government of India, but then ultimately we must realize that we are all support systems. Research, extension, this credit, insurance, inputs, supply, subsidies, etc. Ultimately, everything is to hold the hand of the farmer who is doing the real hard work in the field. Anyway, so that was big. Then, of course, I also found that one tends to get a little lonely and therefore very cautious in the government of India. Some of you, Mr. Chandrasekhar is working in the government of India now, but then he is the head of an institution. In the secretariat, in Delhi in particular, you see, your subordinate can be from the railway service and dealing with, of all things, seed protection, the Seed Act, and your superior may be from the Defense Account Service, and he will be your boss. And your subordinate, one day, I was used to the state government culture. At 5:15, I walked into my PA's room and found that he had locked his room and gone away. Now, this would never happen in state government. Nobody would leave until even 9 p.m. without telling you. But then, Delhi's culture was like that. You have no car to travel to the office or back. And then people are very, if you make a mistake in Hyderabad, in state government, if you make a mistake, you can run behind the file and tell your boss or even the chief minister, sir, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I want that case back. I'll write what I ought to have written earlier. It's no problem. Not in Delhi. Once the paper leaves your desk, it's gone forever. So you'll have to be very, very, clear about what you want to write and transcript. So that sort of precision, informality is there in Delhi. I really thoroughly enjoyed myself. Although initially I was a little sort of anxious and nervous. And I was Joint Secretary Extension, I was Joint Secretary Cooperation, I was Joint Secretary Marketing, I was Joint Secretary International Cooperation, which was an interesting thing because I organized training. I helped choose people for training programs abroad and people coming from abroad for training programs in India. And also it gave an opportunity to deal with the FAO and the WTO. And the FAO, as you all know, has two bodies, the council and the conference. And both meetings I used to go, usually with my secretary. And then when we were in Rome, one always went to the Director General of the World Food Program and also to IFAD and dealing with these people. And at a time when the country was heading towards signing the agreement on agriculture, which was due to be signed in 2000 at that time. So it was a very, very important and exciting time. I thoroughly enjoyed being part of that experience. And in WTO, I found, for instance, that somehow other countries came very thoroughly prepared for the occasions. They used to come in a large gathering, mostly of experts, businessmen, advocates, accountants, etc., who knew what they were talking about. And here I was all by myself, not knowing any of these subjects and completely at a loss because the country simply did not know what a WTO was and what was expected out of a delegation which went there. So in fact, as I always said, it was not a question of answering the questions that were raised there. It was a question of finding the questions to answer because I had no idea of what questions I was supposed to raise. So this is something which is still a question mark in the government of India. We are poor at preparing for our interactions with fora such as international fora such as WTO, etc. And one exciting opportunity came my way. That was the word. FAO for a short while ran a program called the Telefood Program under the South-South Cooperation Arrangement, which was a new one, where instead of the Northern Hemisphere rich countries coming to the aid of poor countries, China assisted, one African country, maybe Burkina Faso or something. Vietnam assisted another one, and India wanted to also join. And the idea was that the FAO and India would contribute $5 per day, and it would come to about $3,000. About $300 in a month in those days, which in addition to an expert's normal salary in the country in which he was working, India at that time, would have been a good incentive for him to go there and settle down. And so I was asked to lead a team first to Rome to design the program, then to Eritrea with a small team. And we designed a program whose special feature was, normally, all of you know, usually delegations from one country to another are small in number of very highly placed people, usually only to the capital of the country, and for a short while, 3 days, 4 days. We designed the program completely different, a large number of middle-level people, deputy directors, assistant engineers at that level, and a large number, not to the capital of the country, and not for 3 days, 4 days, but for a whole year. So, large number, middle-level people for a long time, and going away into the hinterland of the country. It proved to be a very, very successful arrangement. And that visit to Eritrea, I went, after all people who travel abroad have seen New York and Paris and Rome and all that and London. But I tell you honestly, the places I most enjoyed being to Niamey, capital of Niger, Phnom Penh, capital of Kampuchea, and Asmara, capital of Eritrea, because these are countries really much more backward than ours, and that is where the future of India lies. If we want to secure a seat in the General Assembly and all that, agriculture is a very peaceful and non-controversial way of developing a positive relationship with the country. Then, of course, agriculture also took me to some places like Nepal, where we had a joint working group, as it is called, which prepares the agenda for meetings between ministers and all that. And Nepal is a country almost completely different from what we find in India. So we had a lot to exchange in terms of potential for cooperation, and it's interesting. And a similar thing also happened with Bulgaria, where I went with Mr. Sompal, where also we were prepared the ground for a joint working group meeting. But the most interesting part was that 1994, a delegation went to Israel. The first delegation after restoration of relationships with that country, which had been snapped in 1948. So after nearly 50 years, a delegation was going. Sharad Pawar, who was then Chief Minister of Maharashtra, was the leader. I went there, and then that was a very educating visit. That is where I learned what happens in that country. 87.5% of their research of the ARO, as it is called, Agricultural Research Organization, is farmer-driven, solution-oriented. No fundamental research, no blue sky research. Whereas in India, till today, even that other 12.5% we have not achieved the balance. Entirely contract research for the farmers' problems, etc. And another interesting thing was a visit to Iraq when Saddam Hussein was still president. Sompalji was minister. He went to see an exhibition. We were going around in the exhibition, and Sompalji had asked for a appointment with Saddam Hussein, but we didn't quite realize how it would happen. 1 minute my minister was there, the other minute he was gone. I lost my minister, so I thought I'd lose my job. What happened to this man, I didn't know. Then we came to know 4 hours later that he was whisked away by Saddam Hussein's security people, blindfolded, taken in a jeep, made to walk some distance, taken into Saddam Hussein's palace, introduced to Saddam Hussein, he spent some time with him, and then came back. So this is not about agriculture, but because of agriculture, what happened, I'm just telling you. And of course, another interesting thing was that it gave me an opportunity to deal with ICRISAT and in two capacities, both as Secretary Agriculture as well as Chief Secretary Andhra Pradesh. What happened was that I had all my life, having been Joint Secretary, Additional Secretary, Special Secretary, etc. in agriculture, I thought I would love to be Agriculture Secretary. That was my life's ambition. And it happened. I was Additional Secretary, Rural Development. One day I got a call saying, you will become Special Secretary Agriculture. I went there, then a little later became Secretary Agriculture. I had just finished planning a trip to Brussels for dealing with the European community, then to Rome for making friends with FAO again, and to Geneva to say hello to WTO people as a prelude to a long tenure in, there's a sort of goodwill visit kind of thing. And by the time I came back, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu came from Delhi, sent for me to the AP Bhavan and said, I want you to come back as Chief Secretary to the Government of Andhra. Now, what was I to tell him? I took the stand that I don't want to be responsible for my future. So I told him, you are my cadre. I belong to Andhra Pradesh cadre. What you say is, sar aankhon pe, as they say. I said, whatever you decide, you decide. Then he said, you please come back. So I went back, finished. So suddenly, my ambition was cut short. I had to get back. But then I continued my relationship with ICRISAT and then continued to take a close interest in the agriculture sector as Chief Secretary also, which was good. And then there was a little resurrection within quotation marks of my relationship with agriculture when in 2011, some of you will recall, in East Godavari district of Andhra Pradesh, farmers declared a crop holiday, a strike kind of thing, saying that we do not have any trust in the government, neither extension, nor MSP, nor storage, nor irrigation, nor drainage. Nothing is taking place, or even IMD's predictions, etc. So we don't want to grow a crop in this season. A strange and unprecedented occurrence. So I was made chairman of a committee to go and sort of find out what happened. So that gave me an opportunity to reacquaint myself with the agriculture sector. Now to come back to what is happening in the country today, farmers committing suicides is not something acceptable in a civilized society. Certainly not. And I don't subscribe to the view that indebtedness is the only cause, or to the fact that it is entirely because of the middlemen and the usurious interest rates, etc. Internationally, it is well known that interest rates do not matter so long as loans are given in time and adequately. If the farmer gets money when he wants it, and if he gets it as much as he wants, he will not go to he will not be in distress at all. And also, many suicides took place in years in which there was a bumper crop, because of which the suicides took place, like say cotton, for instance. So production, productivity, or crop failure, those are not the questions at all. The question is a market failure. So ultimately, it is that which set me thinking that agriculture departments at the center and the states have both grabbed the wrong end of the stick. We are still measuring our success in terms of how much production of wheat, how much production of cotton or sugarcane or rice, etc. And how much productivity has gone up, per hectare productivity, how much factor productivity is improved, etc. These are not the issues at all. The simple one thing is, 1997, we said this, Mr. Kamal Pandey was Secretary of Agriculture. We said, farmers' income. Please measure how much year after year the farmer is making as a surplus over his investment. That is the only thing which matters. Which, thank God, finally, now we've got a program which says doubling farmers' income, etc., which is what my book is also about. But then it has, durustaya, whatever, the recognition has come that the ultimate goal is increasing the viability of agriculture as a remunerative activity. It should not be a sustenance occupation, but a commercial activity. The transition will have come. But then, for a long time, including today, I'm afraid I have to say, the treatment of agriculture by both the central and state governments is very, very ham-handed. In fact, it clearly shows that their understanding of the problems related to distress in the farming community, or their idea of how to deal with it are both completely off target. So now I don't want to share with you technical details about how much share of agriculture has decreased from 50 to some 15.4, or about how the transaction costs have become, how the terms of trade have become adverse, how the capital formation is going down. All these numbers, you people are experts, you know all this, and even how in a year of positive growth in agriculture also, it was entirely because of a few sectors like fishery and horticulture contributing, and not the main ones. So and even in a year of record growth of the economy, the growth of agriculture actually, the contribution of agriculture actually came down. So if the number of people depending on the agriculture sector remains more or less the same, around say various estimates, anything between say 55 to 60, and if the contribution is continuously falling down, what does it show? It obviously shows that the sector is in distress and the farmer is in trouble. So that's why on this point in 2007, Dr. Swaminathan presided over a round table in ICAR, at which he asked me to make a presentation, and I made a presentation on this subject of, which Professor Chandrasekhara mentioned in the beginning, macro management. See, Government of India and the state governments, I feel they need to rearrange their relationships. In India, agriculture is a state subject, but no state has money. If it has any money, it will put it into giving away sewing machines and laptops and free subsidized food, free clothes, and even sheep, goats, you name it. So they are only interested in short-term doles, which will give them political benefits. So investments in the long term, especially maintenance of say big structures like dams and roads, they have no political appeal. And even bureaucrats, they have fixed tenures. They would much rather do something which gives them satisfaction in the short run than begin things which will take years together, etc. Like a Japanese farmer, I believe, somebody asked him, how long do you think the results of your effort will be seen? How long will it take? I believe this will take about 70 years before this garden shows the results of my effort. Then I believe he said, then how are you interested? He said, if my forefathers also thought like this, even this stage would not have come. So that culture is not there in our politics and administration, unfortunately. We want to see results tomorrow, day after, before the next election and all that. No wonder this thing in sector is in trouble. Now, so all the money is with the Government of India. So the Government of India makes programs. The Government of India has to make a program which must be applicable to Assam, Kerala, Jammu and Kashmir, and to Gujarat. Now, how can you have one housing program which all these four states can enjoy? Obviously, impossible. In housing in Bihar, where there are floods, and Rajasthan, where there is a desert, you can't have the same design or structure. Similarly, agriculture, you see, it is not bound by geography. There are, depending on how you want to choose, 5, 15, or 120 agroecological zones in this country. And each agroecological zone has its own relationship with the environment. And we have to deal with those factors and design programs which correspond to the requirements of the crops, farmers, and the conditions. And everyone, insurance, banking, meteorology, has to learn to tailor their product to the requirements of the farmer in that place for that crop. So, for instance, IMD will say, we expect good rainfall in July, where if it rains in July, Anantapur farmers will be very happy because that is when rain is required in the last week of July for groundnut for a second wetting. But if it rains in July in Prakasam district, cotton crop will be destroyed. So without telling me where it will rain and when, what is the point in telling me how much rain there is? Similarly, banks have what is called scales of finance. At the district level, there's a committee. Now, all of you, so nowadays, ready-made shirts and trousers and everything has become a fashion. But all of us otherwise went to go to a tailor. He takes measurements. He decides what you want. An insurance company should do that. Ultimately, ideally, every farmer should get his unit of land insured for his crop. That stage will come. But in the meanwhile, believing that we are solving these problems through this top-down, rigid, straight-jacketed approach from Delhi will not work. So Therefore, we said, let center do its own job. Do international cooperation, do Reserve Bank of India, do insurance, do ICR, and do FAO, whatever things like that, and leave everything else to the state. But don't give them money. If you give them money, they'll put it in sarees and dhotis and sheep and rice and all that. So allocate money to them, bulk money, don't have programs. No, the two enemies of development in this country are norms and components with which programs come. Norms and components completely, paralyze the state government and leave no scope for them to act. That's why planning should be done. Planning should be done at the Government of India level. There should be a fishery plan. There must be a forest plan. There must be an irrigation plan. But plans should be made at the bottom, village level, following from that plan. So planning is completely different from plans. And we loosely talk about decentralized planning. And how can a village make a plan, start planning for fishery? It's meaning it can prepare a plan for fishery in accordance with the national plan. That is a separate issue altogether. So for this, the planning capacity at the district level is extremely limited. We have Atmas in every district. We have what are called Sametis, SAMETIS, the state agriculture training institutes. And then we have Manage in Hyderabad. So my suggestion has been, it is in fact pending with the Government of India, the minister and other people are aware of that there should be a empowered committee chaired by the Prime Minister at the Government of India level, and similar committees at the Chief Minister level and the collectors level, serviced by Manage, serviced by the Sametis and Atmas, to take instant decisions about agriculture, when the time comes. So now, why I'm saying this is because the entire value chain, you start with research, then you go to extension, then you go to financial services like banking and insurance, then on-farm practices, then storage, then processing, marketing, all these, backward and forward linkages, they need to be flexible and then relevant to the requirement. So we said, provide bulk funds to the states, sit down with them and work out crop-wise, region-wise, intervention-wise, what are the promised quantified deliverables in terms of, production, productivity, and other parameters, soil health, or, things like organic farming, no excessive use of the pesticides and fertilizers, etc., or IPM and things like that. And then also make sure that thematic concerns are addressed. Women, youth, climate change, new threat, and then, so that ultimately when enter into an MOU with every state. Under the RKVY, this beginning has been paid, except that MOUs are not being, insisted upon yet. So enter into an MOU with each state where it promises all these things. And then when you add up everything, all the MOUs at the national level, you get the production you want, you get the productivity you want, and you get also your thematic considerations addressed. So this is precisely what we are missing. And Government of India and the state, in short, both of them have to realize that there are some things which Government of India alone can do. Reserve Bank, insurance, etc. There are some things which the state governments alone can do. Micro level interventions and, Panchayati Raj, people's participation, and then publicity and capacity building, training and things like that. And something which both of them have to do together. Government of India makes ports and then creates infrastructure like roads, etc., railways and things like that. And state government use that for, encouraging marketing, exports and things like that. So complementary and supplementary should be the approach. And they also should make sure that one intervention of the Government of India doesn't nullify the effect of another. You take the very, very forward-looking Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, for instance. Of course, there's poverty in this country and there is starvation in terms of distress, but particularly when there are droughts and all that, and in rain-fed areas, and people must be given wage support and promised and delivered. Yes, agreed. But then that is the main reason for the crop holiday in East Godavari because people stopped coming for agricultural labor, but stopped coming from districts like Vijayanagaram or Mahbubnagar, which they used to earlier, because they were getting their wages wherever they were. Whether they worked or not, whether productive assets are created or not, monitoring of the MG and NREGA, separate issue. But you should also have factored in the possible impact of MG and NREGA on the agriculture season in East Godavari district or in Punjab, Western UP and Haryana, where people come from Bihar, etc. Before saying that throughout the year it will happen and all. There must be some dovetailing of one program with another so that the one program doesn't defeat the purpose of another. The left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing and all. So this is the kind of thing which and Alexander, I'm told, after conquering the whole world, came back and met his guru. Diogenes was his name, and said, Guruji, what can I give you? So I believe that man said, please move out of the way of the sun. I'm feeling cold. Because what can a man like Diogenes want? So similarly, the farmer in this country, he may not give him anything, but please leave him alone first. No, don't stand between him and the market. You support him, you subsidize, you help, you support, you give him everything, and alone. But ultimately, give him access to the best possible market, which is what these new laws are hoping to do. Of course, there will be a short period during which the corporate sector may, sort of exploit this, opportunity. But then, if, as I said, patience should be able to see us through. And for God's sake, don't do things which are dangerous, like loan waivers. Throughout the world, it is well known that writing off of loans vitiates the repayment climate. It reduces the kitty from which loans are being available. And it also only helps those who have taken loans and encourages default because only people who have not repaid are getting the benefit. So in no way is it a good thing. And imagine how much money is which is being spent on that unproductive purpose can be diverted to productive purposes. Like for instance, subsidies. I made a calculation once, it's a well-known calculation. Food and fertilizer subsidy in our country, how effective they are, I don't want to comment on that today. It's a digression one can do without. In the sense, fertilizer subsidy, we all know, ultimately it is helping the factory, workers of the fertilizer factories rather than the farmer. Because if we really want to cheaper fertilizer, yeah, we ask him to buy wherever he wants it from and give him the money directly, direct cash benefit transfer, DBT. Why do you want to subsidize it at the source? So, if fertilizer and food subsidies are withdrawn for a period of 5 years, all the requirements of the pending medium and irrigation projects in the countries can be met. So, which is more important, that or this? So, subsidies are necessary, but they should be back-ended, they should be transparent, and they should be targeted. You don't want to subsidize ganja. And why should you subsidize tobacco? Why should you subsidize Haryana? Why should you subsidize a greenhouse by a rich farmer? So the poor man, the relatively neglected crop and the backward area, these should be the places where subsidies should reach. And therefore, a number of steps have to be taken, as I said, to improve the situation. And all these points have covered in 1 minute. The big five, you see the IMD, which gives forecasts, research, as I said, the Israel type of thing, extension, and financial services and marketing. These have to learn to become farmer friendly and transit from supply mode to a demand driven mode. It should not be a cafeteria approach where you say idli, vada, dosa, you choose what you want. As I say, it should be a tailor-like approach. You tell me what I want, I'll give it to you. No. When ultimately in our country, there's a lot of delegation of authority, but there's very decentralization. I'm prepared to give you a task. I'll say, Professor Chandrasekhara, please post this letter for me. But I will not say that in future, all my letters you can post. No, I'm worried. So delegation is not the thing, decentralization. When decentralization really takes place and districts and talukas and villages become viable and they have the 3 Fs as they are called. functions, funds, and functionaries. When they have all these three, then all things will happen at the bottommost level, and this top-down approach can go. So, a number of steps have to be taken. And then soon, I'm sure a stage will come where farmers and activists will stop asking or begging. They will simply go to a court of law and say, when the farmers are committing suicide, why are you conducting things which are not important? Like I said, the politician should offer the country 5 things in the next 5 years. Women will not be killed, children will not be sold, farmers will not commit suicide, all basic requirements of the common man will be met, and we will be able to fight major challenges like terrorism, climate change, or pandemics, etc. And I will do nothing else until these 5 are done. Otherwise, somebody will soon go to a court of law and say, ask the government of India and the state government to stop everything else. No culture, no higher education, no, until primary health, primary education, and these social evils are met. And courts will order the governments to do that. So, instead of waiting for that, I think it is time. Options and priorities are the important things, which I think our leaders should learn, and the civil servants also. And I think I will stop there and just say that talking to manage, I mean, from Suresh Kumar to Professor Chandrasekhara, I have known all the DGs. It's a great honor and a privilege. And they deal with training and education, as I know. And please remember that education has always been said that it is a drawing out, not a putting in. Don't load the farmer with information and things like that. Deal with his innate genius and ability and encourage that to come out and enable him to empower him to discover his own capacity. And of course, I must confess here that although you people said very flattering things about me in the beginning, I told Professor Chandrasekhara also, just out of curiosity, went to the internet and Googled his name. My God, you people are really fortunate to have such an eminent person as a DG. I have rarely seen a person with so many accomplishments and achievements to his credit and so many remarkable embellishments. So, thanks to a little support from Manage also, I have just recently managed to realize my life's ambition, which was to write a book on agriculture, which Professor Chandrasekhara mentioned in the beginning. And 2020 vision, Professor Chandrasekhara was mentioning, fine. You see, you people must be knowing when you go to an eye doctor also, he will say whether you have 2020 vision to 6x6. So I always told my ministers and chief ministers, I don't want 2020, 6x6 will do. But at least give the farmer that much, no? The minimum thing. Don't, promise the moon and the sky. As Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee used to say, every man and woman should be Ucha Mastak, Ubra Sina, Jina ho to aisa jina. So the farmer in our country should be able to, move around with his head held high, chest swelling with pride and saying, I'm a farmer. And that situation should come soon. And please, all of you remember 2 things before I stop. I met Mr. Abdul Kalam. We had all, as members of the National Disaster Management, called on him. And he knew who I was. He used to come as president when I was chief secretary. And then he had laid down office. We were met in a program on the dais. So he turned to me and said, Mohan, what are you doing? I said, sir, you know what I'm doing. I'm member of the National Disaster Management Authority. I'm a former chief secretary. He said, Mohan, I know your name. I know your designation. I know your position. I want to know whether you have done anything today, yesterday, or last 1 month, specifically. So it is not degrees or, or the jobs or qualifications or credentials which matter, but achievement. Kam ki baat. See, do something and then talk about is I think a simple formula. And for that, I have only one advice to give all of you. Please do your best to be physically fit, mentally alert, and emotionally stable. Everything else will come thereafter. And finally, before I stop, all I want to tell you is about a sloka, which I'm very fond of quoting. It was written, part of a song written by one gentleman called Rajnikant Rao, who's a bard of the Telugu people like Shakespeare in English literature. He was not only literate, but he was various things. He wrote music, he sang music, he wrote plays, he enacted them, things like that. It says, Omkara Parivrittam Viswam, that the universe is circumscribed by the sound of the Omkara, which is true. Gravitational particles and Higgs bosons have shown the same thing. There are ripples at the edge of the expanding universe, ripples of space, ripples in space-time. Omkara Parivrittam Viswam, Sankalpa Parimitam Drusyam. That if you shut your eyes, you will see a vision as big as you want to see. This is what I want the highest political leaders of our country, the senior most civil servants, agriculture scientists, and academicians to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for more than 1 hour uninterrupted, very interesting and inspiring talk out of your life experiences. Or anything coming out of book, probably 1 hour is really boring for all the trainers here. But the examples came from the pages of your life. So it made very interesting. Now the session is open for discussion. Sir, you made a very important statement. Do something. Of course, we write vision and we write reports. We conduct research projects. We conduct training programs. But doing something is very important. Sir, that is very important message of today's talk. And another important thing you told, sir, actually, a accidental agriculture professional. Sir, it happened in case of Professor M.S. Swaminathan also. He was supposed to be a police officer, but he turned out to be a great scientist who ensured green revolution. And Professor Kurian basically is an engineer, but he came as a blessing for animal husbandry sector. Similarly, the same thing is applicable to you also, sir, even though you repeatedly told you are not interested in agriculture, but lot many things happened during your time. Friends, now it is open for, discussion. So before any question comes, in fact, I would like to initiate. Sir, we keep reading, hearing, very small countries like Israel, Netherlands, they are occupying a leadership role in global agriculture. Sir, we are a big country having 130 million farmers and 125 agroecological, agroclimatic zones. We have all seasons and we can grow all the crops. Sir, in ICAR itself, more than 120 research institutions are there. I don't think any country possesses as many number of agriculture scientists and super specialists as we have in our country. For example, in rice, we released 1,500 varieties and more than 100 scientists, they spent their lifetime on rice alone. Sir, I think we strongly feel that we have to give the global leadership, especially in agriculture research and development. And our embassies, Indian embassies abroad, I think they should properly project our agriculture research and development. I'm sure that, sir, we can overtake very small countries like, Israel and the Netherlands.
I fully agree with you, Professor Shekhar. I couldn't agree with you more, except that we must remember both Israel and Netherlands or Sweden or Switzerland or even Vietnam, they are not only small, but they are very viable countries. You see, we have not only these advantages and the God-given endowments, but we have huge problems. We still have poverty, we have inequality, we have natural calamities, and we have a insecure, geopolitical insecurity with some countries and all that. So, and the population on the one hand is a great advantage, manpower and all that. On the other hand, it's also serious challenge. So, which is probably why, on the whole, the output is not as much as it could have been. And also, as you rightly said, we have not been able to project our achievements effectively abroad. I think we should do that. From an eminent and very highly informed audience like this, I invite not only questions but even answers, because I'm sure many of you can provide answers to some of the questions which are still bothering my mind. I'll be happy to hear your opinions also, not merely questions.
Sir, we are totally convinced as managed family regarding your statements, sir. Actually, it is not giving fish to farmers, it is teaching them fishing. So it is not
Exactly.
giving some kind of subsidy, it is one time, but try to empower them, even though it may take some time, but it is long lasting. That is what even Japanese farmers, they told. Our forefathers, they nurtured Japanese agriculture and the same legacy continued. And it is a great message. We are fully convinced about that. We are in the field of capacity building, basically by giving, transferring the knowledge. We hope that the knowledge empowers officers. In turn, they share with the farmers. And fortunately, the focus is shifting from production to income, sir. That is another point which you clearly emphasized. And the recent 3 laws, sir, Manage also was very actively involved in fine-tuning these activities and taking the message on a very big outreach programs. Through very big outreach programs, we could able to reach large number of extension functionaries in nook and corner of the country regarding educating them on these 3 laws. They are breakthroughs, sir. You rightly said we need to have patience. I think we cannot have a lot of apprehensions before we start implementing. Probably same kind of apprehensions were there when Dr. Varghese Kurian started some movement. Probably we would have missed the ride. I think that kind of patience is still required. I think things will improve, sir. Colleagues, Dr. Charilu.
Namaskar, namaskar, sir. Really, sir, it is a very wonderful. My name is Dr. Charilu, working as a program officer at Manage. It is really wonderful motivational speech. I have read your book, recently released book, sir. It is highly, appreciated in our network institutions. More than 200 copies we distributed. Very positive response we got to this book. I have read especially some of the IT related information technology advances, which actually enable the concept of doubling farmers. Can you kindly tell us what would be the future of these technologies at the farmers level? Because at farmers level, still there are some gaps in reaching the last mile, in taking knowledge from the institutions to the farmers to solve their problems in hand. Can you kindly
Yeah, sure. You see, first, information, the access through digital technology can be a tremendously empowering thing in extension. Now, the person-to-person contact is no longer necessary. And also, even the farmer has a merely to be able to formulate his requirements, and the system can respond to that. This can be organized by that. And there are other things also, like in marketing. Today, a farmer can show an intending buyer in Switzerland precisely what there is in his godown, and visually it can be inspected and a deal struck, and even exchange of the price and value can take place electronically. Now, just imagine how many levels of mediation we have overcome through that. So, in marketing, and then also say in plant protection, for instance, you see an entire area struck by say a pest or something, and through a drone, you can take a photograph and then assemble the farmers, and from Manage or from NAM, you can have a chat with them and tell them what to do. So many possibilities are there which have to be explored.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for a very, very mesmerizing session, sir. Actually, you have made us travel through many, many disciplines and many terrains and many aspects of things that are related to agriculture and that are related to our own lives, sir. Actually, we have traveled through many things today during this session. Sir, how agriculture is related to basic science like physics, chemistry, or engineering or marketing, you try to relate it very beautifully, sir. And you also narrated about how actively you spent your tenure in the Ministry of Agriculture, both as Joint Secretary and also in different departments, sir, different departments up till the Secretary of Agriculture. And how you could able to work with different people working for agriculture, but coming from different disciplines, different non-agriculture related disciplines. So how you made as a team and then you supported the farmers of the country, and how you had an exciting opportunities to work with FAO and other different countries, both developed and developing countries, and how you got attached to the poorer countries, and then how you could help by going for delegation, and what are the different things that are happening, like research in Nepal, how it is farmer driven, so how that can be shown in India, and then as your life's ambition as secretary, and then how you came down as Chief Secretary of Andhra Pradesh. And then, sir, you also spoke about this macro management, and these two things are very heart touching, sir. That is, planning should be done at the Government of India level, and then plans should be developed at states and districts and villages. That's that really makes sense, sir, because once the plans are being made by the farmers themselves or the local people themselves, that really makes that really reflects the needs of the people, and then how the outputs can be generated out of the plans. So that's a very heart-touching one, sir. And then also you spoke about entire value chain of agriculture, like research, credit, production, storage, marketing, and then how crop-wise and region-wise plans can be made, and all emerging issues like climate change extension, everything need to come into the agriculture sector, and how complementary and supplementary roles of state government and Government of India can be done for agriculture development, and how dovetailing of programs of different programs of different natures can be dovetailed to benefit the farmers, and functions, funds, and functionaries. Even this also is a very, though the coins are, the words are very well known to all of us, but how do they make sense when they are used in agriculture? So that's very nicely pointed out, sir. And final thing, what I like the most, and I'm sure all of us, those who are going through this session, that is options and priorities, and then what are we doing? Like our late Abdul Kalam ji asked you the question, not your qualification or designation, but what are you doing? What are you doing for the welfare of the farmers, or welfare of the communities, and welfare of the country at large? So thank you so much, sir. And that is a very inspiring session. And thank you very much for giving a very vibrant and very widely covered things that you have mentioned, sir, in the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Chandrasekhar.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. On behalf of Panesh family, we are grateful to you, sir. In spite of pandemic, you shared your valuable time. Sir, when the situation improves, we request you to visit our institution and kindly guide us and bless us, sir. We hope for the day. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Bye,
sir.
all of you. Thank you.